All right, welcome everybody to the Sprint Jump Throw Performance Podcast. I'm Joel Reinhardt along with Andrew Cormier. Lucky today to have on Austin Jochum, sorry about that. He is the owner of Jochum Strength and also the host of Jochum Strength podcast. Thanks for coming on, Austin.
Yeah, Coach, thanks for having me. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So first thing we're looking at, and we noticed just from like your social media in the past month or so, it was you rolled out like a pretty extensive app for some of your clients. And we're just curious because it looked sharp. It wasn't, it looks like something that you didn't half-ass. So I was just curious, like the process of going through like, okay, I have a pretty solid remote client base. Because take us through the process of when you were deciding like, okay, I want to develop an app, and then, the actual process of developing it, troubleshooting it, and rolling it out.
Yeah, I think the whole thing, and thanks for bringing that up. I think that's an interesting question. Like we go on all these like sports performance podcasts, and you talk about like faster, stronger, which is great to talk about. But you go business route. But it was interesting, like the entire process, because I went into this field going in like I'm going to be this big time strength coach at a college, and like that was my goal. That's what I was going to do. And then I continued to listen to big time strength coaches at college or watch them, and they all left or they all said, "Hey, don't do this." I'm like, oh man, like what's happening here? And continuing to look at it, continue to look at my future. I'm like, I need to find a different revenue source, a different revenue stream, listening to business people, listening to, again, people that I wanted to follow or wanted to listen to. Their believability level was high. And that was the original. I'm like, all right, let's try this online training thing. I had a couple athletes ask for it. Let's try this. And it started off just a crapshoot. Like I was trying to figure out how to work Excel, like put everything together. I wanted it to be packaged well so we could market it, like we could do these type of things. And I was just sending out these like basically like crappy Excel sheets, trying to build out an exercise database, trying to do everything at once, which I think is kind of what every small business looks like originally. But I was like, man. And we finally like continued to grow. Like that crapshoot got people just because it was taking just like a program you would write or a program I would write, like a program with some backing to it, rather than like the fitness booty band workout that you're going to find on Instagram. And so people obviously got results. Like it's not magic, but it was like people got results and then they signed up, and we started to kind of build momentum towards, all right, like I'm not comfortable with this crapshoot of like these Excel sheets and figuring that out. Let's find the best way to streamline that. And I think reading the 4-Hour Workweek was probably the biggest eye opener. It's like, all right, if you do want to take this and you do want to take this to the next level and you do want to treat this like the business you want it to be for your future family, for your future, you got to find a way to make it automated. You got to find a way to make it systemized. And that's where I'm like, all right, I need to treat this like I'm training 1,000 clients if I want to train 1,000 clients. And that's where started the app process creation, which was also a crapshoot. Finding the right developer, finding the right coder, and then finding the right person to understand, because understanding what I'm trying to talk about in the sports specific, like sports performance world and what we want, and the coding world, if they don't have that connection, it like did not work. They had no idea what I was talking. I was talking about sets and reps or something like that. It would be not good. And we finally found a developer that was just amazing. It took a long, so he had never built a website like this. He had done like a couple of his own things, and he started working on it. 3 months in, he sent me his rough draft. He's like, hey guy, like this is my rough draft. I understand there's going to be a lot of things wrong. Sent it to me. I open it up and I'm like, oh my God, this is everything I asked for and more. And that's like our app development. And now we're able to have that app and kind of systemize, like I talked about, where we have an exercise database built up of all of our exercises and can type everything in there. And now it's kind of free flowing. We have a spot for our clients to go rather than where we started, which was just not very good.
That's awesome. Where'd you go, even just looking for a developer? Like, what is the process that you went through looking for one?
So I was big into like the 4-Hour Workweek, which was convincing me to go like freelancers and that type of route. So I went down that route, tried to do that, but there's no the tough part there was no connection or communication. I didn't know the person. And then finally, it was so random. It was one of my buddy's ex-girlfriend's brother was a coder that had never built anything. And he got in contact with me and said, hey, Andrew told me you were trying to build the site out. I think I could do it. I'm like, all right, like let's meet at a coffee shop and talk about this. Like I had no expectations going into it. And I sat down and talked to him. He's like, yeah, I can totally do that. I can do all that. I'm like, oh, sweet. Let's do this. And then he was the same guy that sent me the rough draft. We had like, I had low expectations going into it. He had said he had never built anything like that. And then he sent me that rough draft 3 months later. And it was literally T for T, everything that I had drawn out in my head, everything that I had told him to do. And then he smashed it. So it was pretty cool. I would say a lot of luck went into that process.
That's
Yeah. How, I guess, what's the feedback you've gotten from your clients so far on that?
So the best thing is the ability to communicate and track. I think business wise as well. That's their number one thing. They can go there. It's a central hub. They click on an exercise. They do an exercise. They go through that process, and then something they don't love it or they do love it, and they tell me, and then we can design programs based off that. I think that constant feedback is one thing that helps a lot, and that's been the best thing because there's an instant messaging app built into the app. That's, I feel like, the best part that they utilize, but they're also able to track. You talked about like how do we give them measures, and this is for athletes, but this is for our online thing, like giving them measures, giving them something that they can see and visualize has been really good too. We have like three pieces to our clientele a little bit. We have our online clients, which we call our washed up movers. So this is like guys like you and I that like had gone through our athletic days and now we just want to feel better, move better, look better, or like guys that are still in college that aren't athletes. So that's this clientele that I'm talking about. Then we have our athletes in person, and then we have our St. Thomas athletes. So this washed up mover clientele, it gives them like goals and something to visualize in person, which allows us to, one, get a ton of feedback for the business. It's like constant reviews and things to post. So it's constant contact on that end. And then it's also being able to design their programs off how they're doing and what they're doing.
Yeah, that's sharp. That's sharp. I guess too, like, because you developed the app to, make your life easier and to scale up whatever in the future. If you want to go 10x, 100x, whatever it is, you can keep scaling up. But it's obviously nice if it also makes your clients' lives easier too, because then that double helps you. Because if you're looking back on, okay, what was my life like last year? I had this number of clients who were, I was 8 out of 10 happy, and I was a 10 out of 10 busy, and now they're 10 out of 10 happy, and I'm 8 out of 10 busy. Having that reverse is, it's almost like putting the work in on the front end of developing an app, which is, time consuming. It's not, like you said, it's months. It's not, oh, cool, we started talking about it on Monday and it's done on Friday. Like, no. But I'm sure you're so happy now that you you actually did that.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's you had Scott on the podcast, and you guys had talked about how him building out his app in quotations for the GPS tracking, and how that was exactly his goal with it too. Yeah, 100%. Before it would, a lot of the stuff, like it would take probably 5 or 6 hours. And I'm miserable during that part. Like program creation, like creation of things, like that's where my flow state hits. That's what I'm really good at. The like typing in and like the busy work of things like actually drains my soul. Like I was like, oh man, this is killing me.
Yeah.
And now I can do that. I think it saves probably 4 or 5 hours minimum a week. And that was like keeping the same clientele. So obviously as you go up, like that time commitment would increase. So like 4 to 5 hours now you can spend doing something else, like spending I look at it as like, I only have so much brain power. Like I need to stop wasting it on things I don't need to waste it on, and find a way to stop wasting it on that, because I'm not smart enough to be able to expend that brain power on those things. I need to be able to spend it on the things I need to expend it on.
Yeah. I even from talking with Scott, I went into R because I had been kind of pushing off, learning the ins and outs of the Catapult software and just doing it on my own in Excel. And then after talking with Scott, I was like, fuck, I gotta do this. Because it was like, okay, this is gonna be so much easier. Because then women's lacrosse got GPS as well. So then it was ramping up like the amount of technology that I was in charge of. And I didn't want that to ramp up the time that I was spending on it to the same level. So yeah, I finally sat down with the Catapult guy and was like, teach me all of this. And a couple hours later, and it was like, oh, I should have done this months ago. Especially too, because we just got a Jochum dynamic force plate. We got a new laser system. We got a bunch of new tendos, and I forget who I was talking with about. It was like, we're adding all this technology to help, the athletes and help us track better longitudinally and, auto-regulate in the moment. But if adding those 3 or 4 new pieces of technology adds 10 hours to my work week of just focusing on that, like that's a fair amount of money, in terms of human capital being expended on that. So you have to find systems where it's, it's adding as little time as possible to your schedule, I guess. So it was a similar thought process when I saw that you had done the app. I was like, I bet that made his life a lot easier.
Well, and that's something I feel like in our field, though, like the more we can openly talk about building systems and spending less time on things, and the less we can talk about grinding and doing because that's what every coach wants to do. They want to talk about how much they worked, and they want to talk about how much they typed in the data, how much they were like, when the session was over, I typed in data for 7 hours. It's like, well, did you have to? We talk about it and we reward that grind, and we want to like that on Twitter and talk about how cool that is. But it's like, was that the smartest way? Were you spending your brain power on the right thing? And I think just openly talking and discussing about it and not being the meatheads that we all probably naturally are, and taking a step back and realizing, all right, like, let's treat this maybe a little bit more like a business. Let's treat this a little bit smarter in a way of most bang for our buck, so our athletes are actually getting the most of us. We can show up to a session energized rather than showing up to a session, because I've seen coaches show up to a session drained, and then they'll tell athletes how much they worked. It's like, the athletes do not care about that, man. Like, you're not impressing anybody. Like, find a better system. Like, your system sucks. I'm reading Principles by Ray Dalio right now, and that's his whole thing, is like, if you feel pain, if you feel like that, it's because your system sucks and you're not being creative enough to do that. And I think that's now I'm just continuing to look at things that aren't going well, and it's like, because I'm not figuring out the solution to that problem yet.
Yeah.
I forget if it's 4-Hour Work Week or Principles too, where one of them talks about like automating stuff that you don't enjoy, also kind of to like minimize how much negative shit you have to deal with, or stuff that you really just don't enjoy. And it's like, if you can get pretty much the same product, and half the time it's probably better if you automate it, you might as well. Like, at the end of the day, long term, it's going to help you out a ton.
Yeah. And that, I think both of them, I think they both mention a different way, but it's like if you capitalize like on your strengths, and in strengths, or like what you enjoy, so you can actually do what you're good at. I'm not good at typing in data. I'm not good at like even building the app itself. Like, if I wanted to be the meathead strength coach and try to code that app one would have sucked. And like, it would not have been good. Like, but so spend your time on what you're good at. I understand. I took the time to understand, this is what I'm good at, and this is what I'm really, really bad at. Yes, we want to work on those things. Like, yeah, go through that whole process, but I'm never going to be the best in the world at these things. Let's spend my time on the things that hopefully I can be.
Yeah, I like that. True. Cool. I guess like you touched on it a little bit, but with your, I don't know, one thing that you promote a fair amount from your in-person clients is, some of the, I don't know even how, I know how to wrap it all into one category, but just some of the more, qualitative measures around sports performance, whether it's your movement, skills, type work, or some of the contact prep, or just the more interacting with other humans type work. So that's with your in person. How do you balance that with, like you touched on, some of your remote clientele, where that's people want to see like hard progression, maybe, or like my bench went from whatever 225 to 235, and so I guess how do you balance the want of your clients to see progression while also recognizing that some of them also just want to have fun and enjoy themselves?
Most of it is giving them a carrot, give them something that they can see progress with, and then talking to them, continually talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
What you will have especially at St. Thomas, where my private sector is a little different. If they're coming to me in my private sector, they understand exactly what they're getting. They've done their research. They're going to pay me their money to do this. They know a little bit more buy-in. Whereas St. Thomas, we do have a really, I'm blessed. It's not like I'm going into a place that it's tough and the athletes aren't listening. We have a really strong culture at St. Thomas, but you have now you're their coach just because you're their coach. So now you have to get you have to earn a little bit more of that buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's continually explaining to them like what your feedback means, what your goals mean. I want you to be able to tell me, hey, coach, felt that on the field, rather than tell me, hey, coach, bench went up 5 pounds. We'll still work with the things. And the best of both worlds, and what I tell them is your bench will still go up 5 pounds. Like that's still our goal. Like squat, like we're still going to get holistically stronger. It's just, I want you to be able to tell me, hey, that shoulder thing that was keeping me from working that pass rush move is gone away since we've been doing some of these crawls. I understand space a little bit better. I used some of that. We worked on a juke. We worked on a little bit of a move in our skill-based settings. And now I use that on the practice field. And having them understand the feedback that I want to hear and understand the feedback that they should be looking for, rather than the feedback that's been trained in their head. Because you break it back down to like the playground days, like nobody, and it relates really hard, like good to me, because I was always the guy that could come to somebody and tell them, hey, my bench went up 10 pounds. Hey, this went up 15 pounds. Like I was really strong. Sweet. Then you would step on the field and that same person you told that to would be playing better than you. And it's like, well, who cares then? Like, who cares if it's not working on the field? That dude missed his Tuesday and Thursday lift, and then showed up on Saturday and outperforms me, saw the game better than me, did that just because he was naturally better and spent less energy on stuff that was wasting his time. How can we get now best of both worlds of we're getting that athlete to work and we're not missing those Tuesday, Thursday lifts, but now he's an actual good athlete and he understands the game and he's a holistic mover. And now we're seeing it happen on Saturday. We're seeing the stuff that we worked in, the situations that we put them in on Saturday being performed on the field, rather than the bench press, which we'll never see on the field. And the crowd doesn't really care about your bench press unless it's on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even think about that, like distinction between, the kind of the St. Thomas, where you're their coach, whether they like it or not, and your private clientele. It's kind of interesting distinction, because it is so different, and I guess even from are there other aspects of your program that you find are kind of different? I mean, there's going to be differences, but how do you adapt your kind of overarching principles from your kind of very small setting private clientele to, the very large team setting environment?
I would say so we have more athletes at St. Thomas, but I also have more coaches in a sense. I have an assistant and then 2 interns below. So that does help a lot. We have way more space at St. Thomas, especially in the winter. We have a field house. We have a massive weight room that's too big with too much space. Like we have a lot of things that we can do there. The biggest thing is scaling. So keeping the principles the same. Every day we want to be able to move our bodies a different way, move a different person's body, react, score, play, do those type of things. Like we want to keep those same things the same, and then chase some sort of output goal that day, and then work on some weaknesses, chinks in the armor. Like that those are our principles that we do every day. When we are at St. Thomas, it's going to be expanded. The movement is going to be maybe a little less wild or a little less setup. Like maybe we'll do a box parkour and we'll just have a singular box or a singular setup. And a lot of it we'll have our athletes help with too. They'll build their environments rather than here where I'll start off. And when I'm in private sector, they'll start to build it too. It's just less brains going at once. But try to keep the principles the same, just trying to scale it in a different way. And it's really nice that I have people that can help me with it. And then we have a really good culture at St. Thomas to where I can say, hey, we're going to do box parkour or we're going to do this game. Let me know if it's working. Let me know if one of the things I bring up all the time, we do like we did a protect the pin type game with our bigs on one of our sessions. And they're like, well, it would make more sense if we had the pin here and we started here. It would really help if we worked with one hand here rather than two hands, just because sometimes we get stuck in that position. And being able to have a culture like that to where these athletes are telling me that makes it so much easier. So now I can keep my principles the same. I go to them, I'm like, how is that game working? How is this working? Oh, let's change it. Okay, I can trust them to know that's going to work. And then we change that game and we do that.
Yeah, I like that. And it shows, I don't know, just from a broader sense that you're, sometimes it is nice to just be like, hey, we're doing this today, and it all goes perfectly. And you're like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
But there's also, it can be valuable to show the athletes that like, hey, we're trying to push the envelope of what is working. And sometimes that means, things might not go perfectly. Even, and they can appreciate that even from like Saturday. Like you might try some, your D coordinator might try some ridiculous new coverage, and one game it totally fools them and you get a pass breakup on 3rd and long, and or you might get toasted for a touchdown. Like, and you go, all right, scrap that one. Like, but if you're pushing the envelope, you're going to be testing out stuff. I remember what you were saying reminded me of summer at Nichols before our second season there. We were doing a whole bunch of just some open environment type stuff, and there were a couple of days where we were trying to shape the environment to put them in specific like curvilinear patterns, and it just wasn't quite what we were expecting. Like we didn't realize the way we explained the rules incentivized it in such a way that they were doing something else. And so we watched like 2 reps and then we changed it. And it wasn't like the guys were like, well, these fuckers don't know what they're talking about. They were just like, oh, okay, cool. Like, and then it went better. And they were like, all right, sweet. Especially when it's in like a fun competitive environment like that. They just like, I don't know, it seems overall more conducive to like creativity and, just like testing things out, even on the coach's part.
Well, and I think that's, again, as long as you know your goal that you want to accomplish the day, like I don't care the tool to get to that goal. Like you were talking about linear runs. I want to talk about like, let's say I want a high physicality day. I want to work on a day where we're doing man-on-man type coverages, or I want to work on a day where we're going to work on some holistic understanding of zone. I do not care about the drill that I thought was going to be perfect. I care about getting the goal of accomplishing, all right, we put them in zone coverage or a zone type game where they had to understand how to break a zone and how to keep a zone. Like I created an environment that allowed them to understand that for these 10 to 15 minutes of our session. I don't care how it does, because like you said, like I'll write up all these rules and I'll do that. I'll show up and I'll have one rule wrong. Like a lot of times it's literally one rule that didn't click, and we just shift that, or we shift the environment a little bit. And now we're getting the goal rather than the drill. I don't care about the drill. I care about the goal.
Yeah, I like that. Cool. So I guess getting away from some of the more specific, like sports performance type stuff, this other topic was brought up by seeing some of your most recent posts and reading through them. And because I know both me and Andrew have had similar instances for us. But as you kind of progress and your following starts opening up a little bit and you start having interactions with people that you once looked up to, for me, reading your post about writing the article for Just Fly, was what sparked it in my head. But I thought it'd be an interesting conversation. As you like progress in the field, how do you personally deal with, or if you have it at all, some of the like imposter syndrome that can come along with like, hey, you're progressing, and sometimes you're like, should I be? Because I know both of us have kind of had moments like that. But so do you have that? If so, like, how do you kind of, attack it in your own head?
No, that was, I saw that question. That was actually the question that I spent probably the most time like working on. Like, how am I dealing with that? Like, what am I doing? Because it's 100% like I'm writing for Just Fly, like we talked about. Like, I've read them since I've been 15 years old. Like, the first article, the first podcast that got produced, it was like Just Fly and Joe DeFranco, like, were my holy Bible. I would like throw that on in the weight room and like, this is it. And I wrote an article for them. And this is, for me, a little bit is perspective, because like in the moment I'm writing that article, I'm doing that, and I'll type it up and do that type of thing and send it in, and then I'll take that step back and I'm like, holy shit, like that's Just Fly, which to a non-sports performance person, like nobody knows who like Just Fly is. Like, you understand that, but like to me I was like, oh my god, like that's crazy. But the other part of it is like trying to, I've lived a lot of my life in the box of, all right, you do this, you get that. The linear, like thinking linear progression, of you do this, you get that. You work this hard, you get that goal. You do this, you get that, and just continual progression from A to B to B to C, C to D. And it worked to a level, and then it stopped working and it stopped making sense. And I'm like, what is happening here? Like what is happening? And that's where I went back to looking at coaches, looking at some of the super successful people in the world. And it's like almost taking a step out of the box and not trying to compete in the game in a sense. I'm trying to think of the best way to put that to where it's not imposter syndrome, because you're not trying to be somebody else, without saying like you're better than anybody else or you're worse than anybody else or you're not using other people's stuff. You're not doing that. It's like just trying to pursue the truth in the way that you see the truth, and trying to have your thoughts be your own thoughts, rather than where a lot of people I feel like are trying to follow somebody and be somebody. And that's where the imposter syndrome can, like, you try to coattail on somebody for so long, and then it's like that person, you're starting to pass that person up, but you are that person because it's your entire thought process. And I 100 when I wanted to be Joe DeFranco, like that was me for the, like, up until probably 3 years ago, I was Joe DeFranco. Every program I ran was his, everything I did was his. If I got a good job, that's where I feel like when I was looking back on this, like that was the imposter syndrome to me, because I'd be like, I would get a good job, and then like, it's not a good job to me. It's a good job to Joe. Like, that's his stuff. It's what he taught me. So trying to take a step out of that box and just try to do what I think is right, and try to give every single person credit that I've taken from, like Michael Zweifel, like Frank Fornorchins, so many like people, like not most of the ideas that I have are not my own in a sense. I just blend them into how I view it, and I translate it into the Jochum strength way. So I never want to get to a point to where we do this and everybody's like, that's Austin's thing. Like, that none of this is my thing. Like there's so many ideas that I grab on and just like mold into and try to make it into the best way, but also not being in the sense of we're trying to compete. I'm just trying to find the truth in the way that I see the truth, rather than being in the box anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. For me, sometime in the fall, it was we both wrote articles for Simply Faster, and it was like, who gives a shit about what we have to say? Like, what? But some of that was corresponding with Joel, because he was doing it through for Simply Faster, and there was a little bit of like, if I write like all the questions that they gave, and I was writing it out, and then it was like, are people gonna care about this? And then you get a decent response, and you're like, oh, okay. You just do it. And I saw somebody asked Kier on one of his Q&As, like, do you deal with the imposter syndrome? And he was like, yeah, all the time. And then you just say, fuck it and keep going. Like,
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. And I feel like in our field, it's without sounding like a jackass, it's like an alpha field. So everyone wants to feel like their idea is the best idea ever. And they don't want to sound like a dumbass compared to everyone else. So I think there's like this weird balance for some people of wanting to share ideas and talk, but also not wanting to get absolutely blasted on social media by people. And for some people, they allow that to take over where they never share anything and they never reach out and talk to people because they just think it's going to be like a judgmental system. And then there's the other end where people will share literally everything, thinking, look at the cool shit that I'm doing, but they're tagging a million people just so people will like it or repost it purely because they fucking tagged them. And it's like,
don't get me started on that. I didn't know that was a thing until like there's a couple of people that started tagging me, and you would go to their post, and I'm like, oh, they tagged me. Like, let me read through this article. Like, I'm like that. I don't know why I was tagged in that. And I look,
yeah, like you think it's like
900 people.
feedback.
I'm like, dude, come on, man. And that's, I don't know. I love the way you put that though. It's like, put out what you want to put out. Like, not in a sense of you're trying to impress somebody, not in a sense of you're scared of somebody, but like that middle ground of this is what I'm doing. Like, this is what I'm doing now. I openly admit in 5 years, if I'm doing the same thing, it's probably because I'm an idiot and didn't grow. This is what I'm doing now. This is the process that I'm going through. This is how I view it. Blast me. Like, do it. Like, let's have a discussion. Like, maybe it's wrong. We're all like, I think we're like you said, like many people are scared of the big giant because they don't view that hero, that Joe DeFranco type character as somebody that can do any wrong because he's that person. Or on the other side, they think they are the hero. And it's like, the biggest thing for me was understanding like, and I think meeting people through the podcast was the number one thing that helped me with this is they're all just like us. Like, some people are smarter than me. Some people are way more accomplished than me, but they're all like humans, and we all have zero understanding of what's actually happening. Like, in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of the universe, like understanding like what the hell is actually happening. We're at a zero, like we're at a one. Like, there's probably some alien race out there that is laughing at everything we're talking about right now. So to approach it in a way of like, there's demigods in our world of sports performance, which is like 100 years old, seems silly to me. So like, I just approach in a sense of, this is what I'm doing, right or wrong. This is why I'm doing it. It's not to have a cool Instagram. It's to show you this is why I'm doing it in the process. And I did it because when I was 15, I followed Cameron Joss on Instagram, and everything he posted in his thought process and how he did that, like, helped me so much. Even though he now, when I talked to him on the podcast, he's like, I was just posting stuff to post stuff. Like, even though he was doing that, the ideas that sparked and how much that helped me in this field, like, I can never repay that. So hopefully to be able to help somebody on that same journey, that's kind of my goal and thought process with it. And I just like doing it. Like, I like writing. Like, it's something that helps me formulate my thoughts. To be able to force myself to do that 2 times a week on an Instagram, like, take it or leave it. Like, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's something Joel and I talked about too, of doing the Simply Faster Q&A, and even just writing a few articles on our site, is just forcing ourselves to sit down and actually like bulletproof our thought process and like pick holes in it just from ourselves before even sending it to anyone else to like review and edit it, is huge. And like, I was just talking to him the other day of like being almost creative with it, of things that, and you had just mentioned it, of things that you even enjoy or want to talk about. Like, I've recently gone into like rock climbing. So setting up like a general plan of how to set up your like training for sprinting and rock climbing and still being able to train nice and hard, like just that general idea of a holistic approach for all that is like something that I'll enjoy. So I'll probably end up doing that. And I'm sure I might get feedback from someone being like, oh, that's a cool idea. I'm going to do it for X activity. So it's just like actually approaching things from the, like, this is what I enjoy. This is what I'm going to write about. There's good thought behind it. And if you agree or disagree, you definitely can. And I appreciate the feedback, but I'm not afraid to have someone be like, why the fuck would he write about climbing? Like, he's a strength coach.
Well, that's something I love that you mentioned, like, you're actually doing it too, because I think that's something we miss out as strength coaches a lot. Like, one of the best teaching moments for me was playing slow pitch softball this summer. And I would show up, like, without sounding like a jackass, like in the most shape and most athletic on that field. And this is the first time I've stepped on the field and been the most athletic, but I would be the most athletic by like a million. Like there would be this 40-year-old dude smoking a cigarette at the plate and would like be so much better than me in all aspects of the game. Dude was like a high school like baseball dropout and would smoke a cigarette, smack the ball wherever he wanted to, and just be phenomenal at the sport. He would go into the field. He knew how to mitigate his weaknesses. He understood the sport. He understood when to react to the ball, how to set himself up in the best position. And here I am with every output thing checked, check. If I made contact with the ball, awesome. And everybody's like, oh, that's cool. But you look at the actual sport and what you're trying to accomplish in your goal, and it started to just like, all right, I have all the outputs accomplished, and I still suck worse than that dude that is smoking a cigarette at the plate. Like, what is happening? And that's where it's like the understanding of the sport. And if I never played the softball, if all I did was live in my gym in the weight room aspect of it, that's where it's like, well, no, duh, you overvalue those things. It's because you never get exposed. You never literally get exposed by the dude smoking the cigarette in the weight room. Like you're going to show that guy up all the time. But when it comes to what matters, are you doing that? And are you putting yourself in those situations?
Yeah. I mean, a funny thing too is like, I'll usually go with Brandon, who's one of the sports performance coaches that we had on also. And like, we're both obviously relatively strong dudes. Like we're strength coaches. So we've trained hard. It's like, oh, we can hammer fucking chin ups with a ton of weight on a belt. And then like, there's a kid who's like 5'10", 125 pounds, and he's absolutely murdering us and just being able to complete different courses. And it's like, oh, okay, my ability to do a pull-up with weight does not matter because this kid can just like hold on with one hand and like put his feet over his head just to get to the next spot. So it's like having the awareness, like there's technically things, this is a like basically a closed environment sport, and we're still getting absolutely exposed by it, even though it's color-coded rocks telling you where to go. Like, there's so much technique that you need to learn to actually be able to be good at this.
Well, that's something like you take the psychological pressure too of some, you take a sport like that and you take it from the indoor climbing to like, even like, let's say an outdoor climbing, then you have that elevated risk. And if you want to even take it a step deeper of, now I hit softballs in practice and I'm doing that great in practice. And now it's elevated to a game situation. You're climbing perfect in practice. And we elevated that. And now we're taking it to a game situation where it starts to be a little bit more dangerous. And that's where it really gets to, holy shit, those chin-ups don't matter. Like that's where it's like, oh man, now you have the technical and tactical understandings. You're starting to become a good climber. You have an output. And now you have to deal with this psychological stress and process that in real time too. And that's where it's like, holy crap, there's so much that goes into our field. And to give ourselves the pat on the back, we always dwindle it down because it's so much easier to stay here rather than understand and actually put yourself in the stressful situation of trying to prepare your athlete for literally every single thing that is happening in their life. And I don't know, it's just a cool journey when you go through it yourself.
Yeah. Hearing something that you said sparked when I was thinking about, when we were talking about some of the open stuff we were doing at Nichols, and even seeing like the work that we prescribe to our guys and how that's progressed over the last couple of years from like my own recommendations is like, getting, some of it was Zweifel and Sean Mishka, and getting really in depth into some of those open environments and how can we put these guys in environments to, actually improve in sporting environments and not just, closed sort of physical outputs, and progressed in that. But then I even hit a spot where it was like, okay, then it almost kind of went back the other way, not the other way, but in a different route, where instead of trying to find like, okay, where would we fit the open environments? It switched to how can we manipulate the NCAA rules in such a way that they're just playing the sport. Like instead of, hey, we're going to spend 30 minutes, we have an hour-long session, we're going to do half an hour of just kind of linear speed work and then half an hour of some open environment type stuff. It was the the speed work was half an hour at the beginning, and then it went straight into player 7-on-7, where we were scripting out the plays so we knew what they were doing, and we had to have certain coaches leave the field because they weren't allowed to be on the field when the guys were playing, like that sort of thing. And it was almost shifting the lens from like, okay, how do we fit these guys in open environments to help improve football, to, and now this is our lens as we go through all our GPS and all our physical prep, is from now until our first game, how do we play as much high intensity football, high quality, high intensity football as possible? And sometimes that means, you could go for, if you looked at simply the physical prep programs that we put out this past off season, we did essentially zero change of direction, like zero. But then we manipulated the schedule in such a way that they played more football. And so it was a funny, almost looking back for me, where somebody was like, I think I had somebody ask me about like some of the open stuff we were doing at Nichols and how we've kind of progressed that. And I was like, honestly, haven't used it much because we've just shifted in such a way that they play more ball, and they, is 15 minutes of some good targeted open work. How is that in relation to like 15 minutes of one-on-ones with wide receivers versus DBs? And a lot of it depends on logistical setup and, scheduling and all that. Like, and there are certainly environments where we still include that stuff. It's not like all of a sudden that became bad. But it was an interesting thing that I kind of realized in looking back on the last couple of weeks. I was like, we didn't do any, looking back at the 2020 year, and obviously the prep was different. But it was like, we had to shift our focus to how do we play as much football as possible. And that shifting the focus from like, how do we prepare these guys best to play football, even going one further step above that and just simply asking ourselves, how do we get these guys ready to play football while simultaneously playing as much football as possible between now and kickoff? And that was a cool, I don't know, ended up being a cool lens to look through. And I don't know why I thought of that, but.
Well, I think I just met with a football team on Wednesday, and they're like, how would you approach building out like a season, or building out your setup and approach to building like that football player that you mentioned? And you mentioned NCAA. So our setup, right? Like we can't have a football practice, or we can't have a football, like at practice. So like what I was telling them is like, my job is to give the sport coaches, and this is part of it too, is understanding what your sport practice and sport coaches are like. Do you have trust in them, and are they doing an amazing job at technical and tactical understanding in their sport? Because I mean, there's some football, or St. Thomas, like their football knowledge blows my mind. Like I go into those meetings, I'm like, these guys are all PhDs in football. It blows my mind. It's really good. And so I can give them, my goal in my off-season program is to give them a guy that holistically, I don't know, that word is overused, but I need to work on my vocabulary. But holistic tacklers, holistic creators of space, holistic catchers, even holistic throwers. Something I want to work on in this offseason program is working on throwing platforms and throwing outputs and that type of stuff. But holistic throwers, like we've built their skill set up, and now we are going to funnel that into a technical and tactical understanding of the actual sport itself now, just because that's our setup. That's our NCAA rules. So now we have this guy that now understands how to create space, how to catch a ball, how to make this move, and understands what his body's capable of. And now we transition that into, now he's a fullback on this play, in this understanding, in this environment, and just trying to give our coaches a better skilled learners and movers, rather than giving them beefcakes. And now they're like starting from scratch block one every single time. We gave them this beefcake that can do a bunch of outputs, but has no idea how to invade space, has no idea how to hold on or grapple or do any of these things that he's going to be required to do. And I think a lot of that is just keeping the goal, as simple and as selloutish as that sounds, because it's literally everybody talks about it now. But are you actually doing that, or are you trying to keep the tool?
Yeah. I even like hearing you say that, it reminded me of so Brian Kagans is the assistant director at Oklahoma football, and one of the things that he posts a fair amount about is like their early introduction offseason stuff to in different movement patterns. They do it in like this grid setup. I don't know if you've seen that or if you have, but it's, if you do it, go on Brian Kagan's Twitter. It's really interesting. And just from a surface level standpoint, you look at it and it's incredibly closed early on, and then their later summer stuff is tremendously open. And he, obviously has a progression that he follows. But I saw him, somebody was asking him questions on it was Twitter or Instagram or something about their grid work, and was like, this seems like super duper closed. How do you see it translating at all? And he was talking about the way that they direct their guys mentally to approach the movements within it. He was like, they could be doing they're starting facing forward and they're gonna drop step 45 degrees for 5 yards and then sprint forward for 10 yards. He was like, but our offensive tackles, their mental imagery of how that's fitting into a game is different than our DBs, how their mental imagery is fitting into a game. And we direct them on that. We're not just saying, oh, think about how this would apply in a game. Like, they're helping direct them in terms of how it applies into a game. And that had me thinking, like, it's interesting because closed work where the guys are mentally locked in to like, how would this fit into a game setting, could also be, valuable, if not even more valuable than like an open environment where athletes aren't thinking about how it would fit into their specific sporting environment. Not that, obviously the general moving skills would still carry over, but it was like the way he explained it, I was like, dang, that's sharp. And not having heard him talk about it before, I was like, I assumed he had some sort of awesome answer like that, because everything else they do is really sharp. But it was just something I thought about in that realm of like even shaping the athlete perception and focus of the environment that they're in and how it carries over to the game could have, does have a tremendous impact on the carryover, because I could be going through a 5-10-5 and just like, oh, whatever, I'm going fast. Or I'm like seeing how it fits into a game versus if I'm like, oh, okay, I got to dodge past this one guy and get to the pylon. And I'm like, well, whatever, okay, beat him. Like, okay, cool. When are we going to play football? Versus if I'm like, oh, I can see that I'd be like going around the edge of a linebacker and blah, blah. Like, so that perception part of it that he explained, I was like, damn, that's sharp. But
That's almost that's something too. Because I've been thinking about this, is like same thing. Now we take that same approach with our sport practice, because you have guys out there that are almost going like our practices themselves, where they're going in a game, it's happening, they're doing that. But in a practice, do they understand what is happening? Do they understand why it's happening? We have this failure happening. We're running these one-on-ones and we're doing it, but the same guy is failing in the same way. Are we putting him in an environment now to help him with that? Like, are we recreating that understanding? That's something like Zoifel's his football skills account that he's been doing. I love that account, man. He, like, the situations he breaks down and the stuff that he talks about, the way he breaks that down, it's like, all right, now we take that deeper PhD level of an understanding of football, and now we actually apply that to our practices too. And we put that, like you said, that the perception of things. This is what we're running with this one-on-one. This is we're scripting out that 7-on-7, but we're scripting out in a way in where our quarterback has to throw that post route against maybe like the cover 3 that he struggles with during the season. And that's where Cameron Josh is like the process book. He talks about that too. But I think that's something like we can do in all aspects. And you got my brain rolling now in that sense, because I think it's something we could for sure do in all aspects. Look where they're struggling, rather than just doing a football practice because we have we have 2 hours and we have 24 periods that we have to fit into those 2 hours. Let's set it up in a way to where we're actually working with what our athletes need to work on. Our linebacker doesn't understand the process of reading the guard during a power play, and building out an environment in which we're doing that rather than running over bags, or even maybe we're spending less time doing a pass rush. Maybe and this, I just see it a lot in football practices where it's like Mondays are always the same, Tuesdays are always the same, Wednesdays are always the same. Well, you have linebackers that are really good at pass rushing, and you're still going to spend the 4 periods pass rushing when what they aren't very good at is the other play. And scripting and building your own perception of a practice that way is something I think we can take a next step with in the sports performance realm.
Yeah, I'm even thinking about it too, is in terms of like some of the contact prep stuff. Some of it is general enough that it's just like, hey, we're working on these. But as it gets specific at all, like thinking about, I know we've had talks, contact prep type stuff with lacrosse, or even with us, we were doing some stuff leading into our season in the summer, and our D-line coach was out there and was like, yo, that looks exactly like when we do X. And it was like, that's helpful because now we can say that to the guys, and it provides so much more context. The same thought process of like the open environments or change of direction types of stuff. But it's like if they're doing a hand combat thing with a partner and they're just like, oh, I got to win this drill, versus like, oh, when I'm with a D lineman and I feel here, this is what I'm working on. Like even just that mental avenue of like perception is huge, because in terms of carryover, because if you're not seeing how and maybe it takes until you get a couple game reps of it or a practice reps of it and you feel and you go, oh coach, this was that drill from the summer. And maybe it does take that time. But if we can start to introduce that perception model earlier on, it's probably going to be valuable.
Yeah. And just their buy-in to the drill too. Like we talk, if we want to bring it back to you're just their coach because you're their coach and they want to do ladder drills, and now you're forcing them to do some of these open base drills, hey, this is why. One for me, the biggest thing is showing them actual film of this, showing them a film from the QB's perspective of what's happening. It's getting that buy-in of, this is why we're doing this drill. Look how similar this drill that I have up on my phone is, and not that in a sense is the same at all. I understand there's way more stressors, there's way more things actually happening in the game, but for the athlete's perception and buy-in, for them to understand that drill, look how similar this drill is that we're doing, this open environment that we're doing is compared to that ladder drill that we're doing. And that's where I've really seen the light bulb moments come on for the athletes themselves to kind of burn the ladders, burn whatever you want to do, burn that drill. And they start to buy in, because from what I've understood, when I started off, it was the athlete's just being a jackass. They just want to do it. And when you start to understand, it's they're not being a jackass. It's their understanding of sports performance in that moment. Their goal is to become a really good athlete. And they see Juju Smith-Schuster do that. And Juju's a phenomenal athlete. I would want to look like him too. And I see him doing that drill, just reframing why they're thinking that way. And you show them, Juju's doing those ladder drills, but look what he actually does on game day, and then look at his practice, and that practice rep is probably has way more to do with that than his ladder drill he posted on Instagram, and getting that light bulb moment for the athlete. Oh, okay, I see what's happening here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That even something I talked to Brandon about, I hate to be the guy that brings it back to climbing, but I'm going to, is using climbing as an avenue to actually get into a grappling-based sport, because I actually never did any harder physical contact grappling sports when I grew up, and using climbing as a closed environment where I needed to learn how to manipulate my leverage on things, and then eventually getting into a grappling-based sport like if it was a jiu-jitsu, learning how to manipulate my leverage against a person will be the next step. But I was this is going to be a great logical progression for me in my head of yes, my goal is to get to the top of that route climbing, but the only way for me to do that is to improve my ability to leverage myself getting where I need to go, and then being able to transfer that against another person slowly over time. I was this is great. I wish I actually thought of that years ago.
And if you grabbed, and I'm interested, have you grabbed any global concepts from you doing it yourself and applied it back into the sports and athletes that you work with? Have you done any of that?
I'll be honest, I recently just started climbing like the past couple months. So I think I started it right as kids left. So I honestly haven't been able to do much with it yet.
Because that was something that in like my journey to trying to dunk a basketball, I would like the obsession of doing that, like being able to grab those concepts and understand like what power actually is and like how fluid some people can actually move. Like it just absolutely blew my mind of my big short T-Rex arm would walk on that basketball court and you would have these high jumpers. I would always try and dunk with these high jumpers that at the track practice that would come with us just because I wanted to see them jump. And my goodness, like there's one dude, I think his max squat was 300 and it would have been like half squat if we wanted to be generous. Like if you wanted to say his max squat, and this dude would like honey dip, like, and no warm-ups, man. He would walk up to the ball. He wasn't a basketball player, could not dribble the ball. It was hilarious. Like was horrible at basketball, but you just give him the ball and he would run at the rim and just float and dunk and just gets your wheels turning of looking at moving and understanding in a different light and trying to take things from that. And like, all right, how can I get maybe a wide receiver or a lineman to start to move like that and stop seeing strength through the lens that I've seen strength through for the entire career in my entire life so far.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Cool. That's probably, that's right about an hour. So that's probably a solid spot to wrap up. Really appreciate you doing this. I know I first got introduced to you when I was on your podcast and then just kind of following your stuff and really appreciate it. And I wanted to have you on. So, yeah, thanks for doing this. Didn't disappoint.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. This is awesome. We got in some rabbit holes, which is always good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
For sure.
We appreciate it.